What would you do if I told you that politics has nothing to do with goodness? That morality, as we understand it, is irrelevant when it comes to holding power. Niccolo Machiavelli is often remembered as a villain, a symbol of deceit and ruthlessness in the annals of history. Let's face it, he earned that reputation. But what if there's more to his philosophy than meets the eye? What if his controversial ideas reveal uncomfortable truths about how power really works, even today? Machiavelli wasn't just a political theorist. He was a product of a turbulent time, a time when cruelty, manipulation, and betrayal weren't just tools of power. They were the very currency of survival. Machiavelli was born in 1469 in Florence, a city that was both a cradle of art and a battlefield of politics. His family, while of noble descent, lived modestly. His father, Bernardo, was a struggling lawyer, frequently unemployed. Meanwhile, his devout mother wrote hymns and poetry, a stark contrast to his father's skeptical view of religion. Florence, at the time, was a republic in name only. Its democratic structure was fragile, with power rotating between elected leaders every 2 months. In theory, this system prevented dominance by any single faction. In practice, it was a playground for manipulation, and the powerful Medici family played the game better than anyone else. Behind the facade of Republican ideals, the Medici ensured their allies stayed in power through rigged lotteries and strategic alliances. This unstable and corrupt environment shaped Machiavelli's understanding of politics early on. By the age of 9, Machiavelli witnessed firsthand the brutal consequences of challenging the status quo. The conspirators who dared to rise against the Medici were publicly hanged, their bodies left to rot as a chilling warning. These moments of violence and betrayal left a mark on Machiavelli, shaping his view of power as a ruthless, unforgiving force. In 1494, after the Medici were temporarily expelled, Machiavelli entered public service. Starting as a low-ranking clerk, he quickly climbed the ranks. By 28, he held 2 key positions: Secretary of the Second Chancery and Secretary of the Ten of War, overseeing military preparations and foreign relations. For over a decade, he was Florence's most important diplomat. Though critics later dismissed his career as unsuccessful, his rise in such turbulent times was nothing short of remarkable. But fortune is fickle. In 1512, the Medici returned to power, and suspicion of conspiracy landed Machiavelli in prison. Tortured and humiliated, he was eventually exiled, left to contemplate his failure. It was during this exile that Machiavelli wrote his most famous work, The Prince. Far from a philosophical treatise, it was a pragmatic guide, a survival manual for rulers navigating the treacherous waters of power. Machiavelli wrote The Prince as a gift for Lorenzo de' Medici, the powerful head of the Medici family. His goal? To regain favor and perhaps a position in Florentine politics. But ironically, the man for whom this groundbreaking work was written may never have read it. The ideas within The Prince were unlike anything written before. In an era when rulers were judged by their morality, Machiavelli shattered conventions. For him, the question wasn't whether a leader was good or virtuous. It was whether they were effective. In Machiavelli's world, power wasn't about morality. It was about results. To succeed, a leader had to be ruthless, when necessary, compassionate when advantageous, and always pragmatic. One of Machiavelli's prime examples of effective leadership was Cesare Borgia. Known for his cunning and cruelty, Borgia conquered territories, crushed opposition, and manipulated alliances with cold precision. Yet even he would fall victim to the unpredictable nature of fortune. When Borgia seized Cesena, he left Ramiro de Lorca to impose order, at any cost. Lorca's reign of terror was swift and brutal, earning him the hatred of the people. To protect his image, Borgia executed Lorca and presented himself as the savior of Cesena. The people, relieved at the death of their tormentor, rallied around Borgia. This calculated betrayal was a masterclass in Machiavellian strategy. Using cruelty sparingly, but decisively to maintain control. Machiavelli's admiration for Borgia wasn't about morality, it was about effectiveness. He argued that a leader must be willing to do what is necessary, even if it means abandoning traditional ethics. It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both, Machiavelli wrote. Love is fickle, he argued, but fear is reliable. Fear keeps subjects loyal, while love can vanish in the face of adversity. But even fear has its limits. A ruler must avoid being hated at all costs. Hatred breeds conspiracies, rebellion, and ultimately downfall. Violence, when necessary, must be swift and forgotten, not prolonged and resented. Machiavelli's insights extend beyond the Renaissance. His principles resonate even in today's political arena, where appearances often outweigh actions. Leaders still craft public images of morality while wielding power in ways that are anything but virtuous. Machiavelli believed that honesty, while admirable, often had no place in the corridors of power. In his view, a ruler who insists on truthfulness is at a disadvantage in a world filled with deceit and betrayal. A wise ruler, Machiavelli argued, should never keep promises that are no longer in their interest. This pragmatism may seem cold, even cruel, but for Machiavelli, it was simply realistic. Power wasn't about being honest. It was about appearing honest while achieving your goals. To Machiavelli, perception was as important as action. A ruler didn't need to embody virtues like compassion or loyalty. They only needed to appear virtuous. The public judges leaders based on what they see and hear, not on what happens behind closed doors. For Machiavelli, politics was theater, and rulers were its actors. The performance had to be convincing, but the methods to achieve results, those could be as ruthless as necessary. Fortune in Machiavelli's philosophy is like a river, unpredictable, destructive, and beyond human control. But just as engineers can build dams and levees to mitigate a flood, leaders can prepare for the whims of fate. Preparation, adaptability, and decisiveness. These were Machiavelli's tools for combating fortune. He believed that while luck dictates half of our lives, the other half is shaped by our actions and resilience. To Machiavelli, a rigid leader was a doomed leader. Success in one era might lead to failure in the next if a ruler clings to outdated strategies. The ability to change with the times was, in his eyes, the ultimate mark of greatness. Machiavelli saw humans not as noble creatures, but as inherently selfish, deceitful, and driven by base desires. Beneath the surface of morality lies what he called the beast within. A ruler, Machiavelli wrote, must be both a lion and a fox, strong enough to fight off enemies and cunning enough to avoid traps. It's a delicate balance, one that requires harnessing the beast without letting it run wild. For Machiavelli, the greatest leaders were those who could embrace their instincts while maintaining the discipline to wield them strategically. Ethics had their place, but survival often required stepping beyond them. When The Prince was finally published after Machiavelli's death, it ignited a firestorm of controversy. Critics called it the work of the devil, a guide to immorality, and a blueprint for tyranny. The Catholic Church banned it, and many saw Machiavelli as a symbol of corruption. Yet, others viewed his work as an unflinching look at the harsh realities of power. Centuries later, The Prince remains relevant. Its principles, though divisive, continue to shape the strategies of leaders worldwide. Whether it's politics, business, or warfare, Machiavelli's insights into power and human nature still resonate. Machiavelli's later years were marked by disappointment. Despite his brilliance, his work alienated him from the very circles of power he sought to influence. The Medici family, for whom The Prince was intended, never restored him to political office. Ironically, the principles he so meticulously outlined in The Prince may have been his undoing. Who would trust a man who openly advocated for deceit, manipulation, and betrayal? The very ideas that made his work revolutionary rendered him untrustworthy in the eyes of his contemporaries. While others jockeyed for power in the chaotic political landscape, Machiavelli remained on the sidelines. His exile became a prison of the soul, his sharp mind reduced to writing plays and poems, instead of influencing policy. After his death in 1527, Machiavelli's name became synonymous with treachery. The term Machiavellian emerged as a label for manipulation and ruthlessness. But was this fair? Was Machiavelli truly the villain history painted him to be? Machiavelli's critics often overlooked the subtleties of his philosophy. He didn't advocate for cruelty's sake. His ideas were rooted in pragmatism, not malice. For Machiavelli, power wasn't inherently evil. It was a necessity, a tool for stability in a chaotic world. Even today, his lessons linger in the strategies of politicians, CEOs, and military leaders. Public personas are meticulously curated. Promises are made with calculated intent. And power is wielded with an understanding that morality often takes a back seat to necessity. Machiavelli's world was one of constant upheaval, where alliances were as fleeting as the winds of fortune. He observed firsthand how leaders who clung to outdated values were swept away by those willing to adapt. Fortune favors the bold, he believed, but only if they are prepared. His insistence on preparation and adaptability wasn't just for rulers. It was a lesson for anyone seeking to navigate the unpredictable tides of life. Machiavelli's philosophy transcends time. It speaks to the human condition, the tension between ambition and ethics, the need for control in an uncontrollable world, and the eternal struggle to balance ideals with reality. Machiavelli's legacy isn't just a guide for rulers. It's a mirror held up to society. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, morality, and the nature of humanity. Whether you see him as a villain or a visionary, one thing is certain: his ideas still challenge us to this day. Though centuries have passed since Machiavelli's time, his insights into power remain eerily relevant. From the backrooms of politics to the corner offices of corporations, his ideas echo in the strategies of modern leaders. But here's the question: are we as a society better for embracing his realism, or are we trapped by it? Machiavelli's philosophy teaches us to value results over ideals, to prioritize power over virtue. Yet it also asks us to confront an unsettling truth about ourselves. Are we drawn to leaders who embody these traits, even as we criticize them? Generations of thinkers have wrestled with Machiavelli's questions. Can power ever truly align with morality? Should leaders prioritize doing what's right or what's effective? And if we reject Machiavelli's realism, do we risk losing touch with how the world really works? His name has become synonymous with cynicism, yet his writings reveal a deeper intent. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for villainy. He was exposing the harsh realities of power, forcing us to see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't just crafting a manual for rulers. He was issuing a challenge to look beyond surface virtues and grapple with the complexities of leadership. In times of uncertainty, do we want leaders who are good or leaders who are effective? And can we ever truly have both? In the end, Machiavelli's life was filled with contradictions. He was a man who loved Florence, yet he was exiled from it. A man who dreamed of influencing politics, yet found himself sidelined. A thinker whose words have endured, even as his own era rejected him. Perhaps his greatest lesson is this: the world is messy, unpredictable, and often unforgiving. But for those who can navigate its complexities with courage and adaptability, greatness is possible, even if it comes at a cost. Machiavelli's teachings aren't confined to palaces or battlefields. His principles resonate in boardrooms, campaign trails, and even in our personal lives. The drive to adapt, to strategize, and to control outcomes is as human as it is political. In a way, we're all navigating a Machiavellian world. Whether it's climbing the corporate ladder, managing relationships, or leading a team, his lessons on power and perception offer tools, not rules, for survival. But here lies the paradox. How much of Machiavelli's philosophy can we embrace without compromising our humanity? Can we balance his pragmatic realism with our moral aspirations? Or is that balance nothing more than an illusion? Machiavelli's words are as divisive today as they were 5 centuries ago. Some see him as a guide, a realist, who stripped away the illusions of idealism. Others see him as a cynic, a man who justified cruelty and deception in the pursuit of power. But perhaps Machiavelli's true genius lies in his refusal to tell us what to believe. He doesn't preach morality or immorality. He simply lays bare the mechanics of power and leaves us to decide how to use them. Machiavelli lived in a time of chaos, where survival often demanded compromise. Yet his work transcends his era, forcing us to ask questions that remain as relevant as ever. What kind of leaders do we want? What kind of leaders do we need? And when the two don't align, which one will we choose? Niccolò Machiavelli, a man of contradictions, a thinker of uncomfortable truths, and a voice that continues to echo through history. Love him or hate him, his ideas compel us to confront the nature of power and the nature of ourselves. Why does Machiavelli endure? Why, after 500 years, do we still grapple with his ideas? Because he forces us to ask the hard questions. Questions about power, morality, and the human condition. Every generation revisits Machiavelli not just to understand leadership, but to understand themselves. His work isn't merely a guide for rulers. It's a lens through which we examine the systems we live in and the choices we make. Is there a middle ground? Can we learn from Machiavelli without becoming Machiavellian? Machiavelli's philosophy doesn't dictate actions. It reveals possibilities. He challenges us to navigate the murky waters of power with clarity and intention. But his greatest lesson may not be about power at all. Beneath the pragmatism, the cunning, and the strategy lies a deeper truth. Machiavelli wasn't merely teaching rulers how to hold power. He was teaching all of us how to confront the unpredictable nature of life itself. Machiavelli's legacy isn't just his insights into power. It's the enduring questions he leaves us with. How do we lead? How do we follow? And how do we reconcile the world as it is with the world as it should be? Centuries after his death, Machiavelli's Florence still stands, a city of beauty, history, and contradictions, just like the man himself. But while Florence has become a symbol of art and culture, Machiavelli's ideas remain alive in the pulse of power that beats across the globe. Machiavelli's work reminds us that power isn't just about control. It's about strategy, adaptability, and understanding human nature. These lessons transcend time, shaping leaders and societies in ways both visible and unseen. So the next time you hear the word Machiavellian, think beyond the caricature of a villain. Instead, consider the deeper truths he sought to reveal, truths about ambition, resilience, and the price of leadership in an imperfect world. Niccolò Machiavelli may no longer walk these streets, but his ideas continue to walk among us, challenging how we lead, how we follow, and how we confront the eternal dance between morality and power. Machiavelli's philosophy doesn't just belong to the past, it's woven into the fabric of today. From boardrooms to battlefields, from protest lines to campaign stages, his lessons resonate in the strategies of those who seek to shape the world. And his ideas don't just speak to leaders, they speak to all of us. Because whether we realize it or not, we all navigate power in our daily lives. We all balance ideals with reality, struggle with uncertainty, and adapt to survive. In the end, Machiavelli's greatest gift wasn't a roadmap for power. It was a mirror for humanity. A mirror that reflects our ambitions, our flaws, and our potential to shape the world around us. And so, his story continues, not in the pages of history, but in the choices we make every day. Machiavelli's words, written in exile, continue to travel through time, shaping discussions in politics, business, and philosophy. They are both a challenge and an invitation to think critically about power, morality, and what it means to lead. The question isn't whether Machiavelli was right or wrong. It's whether we are brave enough to confront his truths, adapt them to our circumstances, and decide for ourselves how to navigate the complexities of life and leadership. Machiavelli remains a paradox, a thinker who showed us the raw mechanics of power, while leaving its moral implications in our hands. His enduring legacy challenges us to see the world not as we wish it to be, but as it truly is, and to decide what we will make of it. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Therefore, one must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with a fellow thinker, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journey into the minds of history's greatest thinkers. Thank you for watching. And remember, the world is full of questions. It's up to us to find the answers.